Welcome to another episode of an Inside Job War on Addiction. This is show 41, and I'm very happy about that. I don't know if I said it in the other one, but we're coming up on 3 years doing this. I should say right now the reason why I do this. Since the opiate crisis happened, I was just so devastated with people dying. KC was her name. She came in, she was getting sober, we were all pulling for her, and then I didn't see her for 3 or 4 days, and I asked, and she was dead. And that's what I've experienced and observed. This thing is just, and I'll get into a little of that after, because it's just what this thing is doing to society. You wouldn't believe the money it costs, the lives it lost. So I'll talk a little about that later. But that's why I began this thing, because I couldn't stomach it anymore. And I came down and asked Carl, the executive director, and I talked to him, and I knew him from before. And he said, yeah, just like that. And I have to say, they are just so good to me and so supportive that this show wouldn't happen. If I came in and I was, I felt like I was taking up, people's time, then it just wouldn't be easy. But man, it's just so good. So that's why I began this thing 3 years ago. I see it as beyond an epidemic. I see it as like a plague of locusts coming in. 200 a day. Can you believe that? We don't lose that many in war, or it's just amazing. I do know that the system is broken because the numbers are getting higher. There's a lot of people in the trenches helping, but the numbers keep going up. So what's the solution? What is the solution? I hear a lot of numbers, and I hear a lot of facts and charts and whatever else, but I never hear about any solutions to this thing. The odds are that after a detox or just home at white knuckling it by yourself, you're going to go out again. By that I mean you're going to head back out. I was very fortunate. For me, that I fell in love so much with AA, and I just worked at it so hard that I never looked back. I've been sober for 37 years, like I said, and I never looked back, and I still attend meetings. I love meetings. That's the only people that I know and hang around with, and it gets me out of the house. It gets me out of the house versus being alone, and that's, again, white-knuckling it, all alone, nobody to talk to, and going through things like social events. And, I went through it in the beginning at a wedding, whatever. Everybody's drinking. Not everybody's getting drunk, but there's certainly some people that are, and just enjoying themselves. And people can do that. Some people can do that. So sitting through that thing, you know, being uncomfortable. I used to love weddings. I'd look forward to them for, you know, a week or something, because it was legal for me. My wife would give me a pass or something, and I could drink. So that's that. Going to meetings, working hard. It's just the odds are so much against people getting it the first time, people not getting it the first time, like I said, at home, white knuckling it, nobody to talk to, and in your own head. And that's how it was for me this summer. Even though I was going to meetings, my head just wasn't right. This year, I hope it's right. I do a lot of meditation. You know, there's other things I have to do to work on my spirituality. And part of that is meditating, and part of that is Tai Chi, and part of that is recovery. And that's the difference, one of the differences between being home, white knuckling it, or being a part of the program. We are in recovery. And if, you know, if somebody's attending AA and doing, one girl in particular, like lately, she's been sober 2 months. I watched her when she came in, and she's been working hard in the kitchen and going on commitments at other meetings. She has a sponsor, and she chaired the meeting yesterday. She talked for, you know, about 10 or 15 minutes. She didn't want to go up there. I said, get up there. Anyway, I'm going too far into that. It's just recovery. We want to help you. We'll do anything we can to help you. But in the final, what would be it? When it comes down to the end, when you're sober, and we did everything we could, and you worked hard maybe, but something went awry, and you picked it up, and you have to eat that. And eat that can be very rough. Some people never come back. Some people die. Some people go back to jail. It's just, you know, there was another saying, it's easy, just don't drink. But it's not easy. Yeah, that begins at not picking up a drink, but there's just so much, especially with the opiates are around now. I mean, and we've talked about it in the other shows, and I had mentioned a documentary, and that's following one girl, Chanel, through this whole thing, her life, and where she is now, and it's pretty profound. Where am I at now? So I got sober, you know, and it has its ups and downs, just like everybody has ups and downs. But we call it life on life's terms, and a lot of us didn't know how to deal with life on life terms, because if it got to that point, we went to booze or drugs. That's how we dealt with the whole thing. So I was 9 years sober. I was up the prison around here, And I was coming out, it was for AA, coming out of the prison, go up the road, take a right, go up the road on 140. And where I was going, it was all blocked off and lights and everything. And I said, what is happening? They closed down the whole highway. So I went home, another way, went home, got a call from my oldest son, and he said, your son, Kerry, is dead. And he hung up. You know, when you're drinking, when you're drugging, you get very selfish, getting your drink, getting your drugs. I was at 9 years sober. At 5 years sober, at 2 years sober, I still couldn't even walk right. At 5 years sober, I was just becoming normal. I had a normal thought. Be somewhere and say, wow, that's normal. Is that what normal is? And so it went on. For me, it was a long process, getting better. So I get the call, your son's dead. So back to the selfish part. It got very strained between my son and myself, and it could bring tears to my eyes right now, and I hope it doesn't, because I've tried to black the whole thing out. My wife was always good. She was always good with me being able to see the kids, drunk or sober. But because of my selfishness, even sober, I didn't see him enough. You know, I was cooking, I love cooking, I was doing other stuff, but maybe I just didn't know how to deal with having children. But for a year and a half, he didn't talk to me. And then he died. It was left undone. My oldest son, or my wife, said, he was just getting ready to come back in your life. He was 22 years old. It was a car accident. And that it's gotten better, because in the beginning, at 9 years sober, I didn't know if I was going to make it. It would come, you know, my nature is very sensitive to things. And I just couldn't deal with it. And it would come in waves. I'd be sitting there and it'd just come right over me. I stopped going to AA. I just couldn't hear or listen to somebody that said they picked up or even not picked up because of, because their meal wasn't right. I just couldn't listen to it. So I didn't go for 2 months. But the people were still up at my house, AA people, friends, sitting at my kitchen table. I'll never forget that. And one of them just died. I've had 3 deaths in the last 6 months, all very, very, very good friends. You know, the last one yesterday. I mean, we grew up together, and we had those good times from 16 and a half to 19 and a half. And we were like brothers, just like Danny and myself, like brothers. Been a lot of years. So that was his death. And to this day, I don't have a picture of him in the house. I can't deal with it. I didn't deal with it right. I just shut it down, And maybe that's why I paid the price. If I even begin thinking of it, it can do me in. To this day, however many years ago, whatever, 9 from 37 years. And so that's that. That's that. I have been relieved of that somewhat in the last 6 months. It's like a gift from somewhere, because I, in my nature, I just kept hammering myself about this stuff, hammering myself about leaving the kids when they were 10, just beating myself up, and then back then, trying to drink it away. But then I get sober and I have to look at this thing head on, face on. There was a lot of good people that helped me back then. Danny saved my life, all right? He saved my life. Can you imagine that? He had a year put together. Like I said, I remembered that he put that together, and I called him. And he's the one that got me up, but he saved my life. And then some other people came into my life. I don't know where that was going, but that's the 9-year thing. You know, through the other years, through the rest of the years, it's been ups and downs, and some really, you know, like my granddaughter dying. With my son, he is clean now. We don't talk too much. It's just strained. We both love each other, but he thinks that you know, it's been a lot, 37 years with him, trying to get him sober, watching him go in a detox, doing everything we could, my wife and myself. And I was gung-ho with AA. We did everything, I believe, that we could to try to get him sober. You know I caused some of that, because I know my upbringing with all that and how it turned bad. I could do another half hour, but I want to get some other things in, all right? The up and down of life, the recovery that gets me through this stuff. I can call people, and they're there for me, and I can go to a meeting. I'll miss today's, but I can go tomorrow, raise my hand, and say, you know, I just buried one of my best friends. You know, I'm not going to drink. I know that. But it's just dealing with this shit. But I have the people. 200 people are dying a day. That doesn't count the people that are, I don't know if I talked about it in the last thing, but picked up, overdosing, and that doesn't count them. That doesn't count the people that are sick and suffering, that maybe haven't found the program, are still out there, or white knuckling, or whatever. 200 people dying a day, besides all these losses to society. You know, there's a fact about the loss of productivity with this epidemic. 2-point-something billion. You know, I have a lot of facts. 2-point-whatever billion lost productivity for this epidemic. So all those losses with people dying and people suffering, and how one addict can devastate everything around them. Mother, father, watching this stuff, watching their son or daughter in the midst of this disease, with having to say at the end, I can't do it anymore. We can't do it anymore. We'll get you in a detox, we'll do that, but you have to leave. That whole thing. And there's so much just devastation around them. There's some things, if I go back, when I came back from Vietnam, I had an amazing job. It was a computer field. And I was there 6 years, and I drank myself out of it. But there's one guy that he was one of the best people, one of the best bosses in my life. And I let him down, and I'm going to call him at some point. We got his number, but I let him down. The embarrassment. Anyway, besides all that, it is costing us as society $1 trillion a year. Isn't that absurd? And I know it's higher than that. The mayor of this town, who was a former cop, said half their calls that they go out on is for theft. You know, people having to steal steal for their addiction. It's horrible. But $1 billion, and nobody has a solution. The system is broken, and nobody has a solution. I would be my ego would come into play, and it's not about ego. But through my experience, through running a house for veterans for 6 years and seeing what works, and just seeing people in the program, what happens. I don't know if I said it. I don't think I did. When I went up to Narcag Hospital, that was 31 days. Then to a halfway house for 6 months, because I had nothing. And then I went back to the hospital and lived upstairs and worked downstairs. So I was 2.25 years behind the walls of AA. And I think that saved me also. That's all I had. Went out to meetings with the people in the evening, a lot of meetings inside, and I attended them all because I was just gung-ho. So beside $1 trillion, the system is broken. You don't hear about any of this stuff on television. Our esteemed president talks about a drug czar, and there's been other drug czar, and there was the drug war, whatever it was called back in, the drug war with Reagan and all that. Nothing has helped. The numbers keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So what's the solution? So I understand some things, but people, there's no focus. You know, if you had your son die, you have some focus. But mainstream society, my opinion, there is no focus on this thing. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and that's what he had. He said, do you think that we should be paying for these addicts? He's not in favor of it. I said, how about it's costing $1 trillion out of your pocket? They have to spend some money. They have to do some research. But there is a plan that I don't want to run it, but I understand what has to be done, because it can't be done in a 7-day, they call it a spin dry, because going in and coming out and you know nothing. You're still so sick maybe you got a chance, trying it. I know one guy, 13 times, and then he got it. Took him 13 times. No, yeah, it was 13 years. That's what it was. Just couldn't get it. But he finally did. So I know what can work out, especially from running that house. I ran it in a certain way with not pushing anyway. That may be another show because this stuff drives me crazy. So the red light just went on. I'm very happy about doing this. I didn't know if I had, it was winging it. I didn't know if I had enough to fill one show, but we filled two, and I hope it made some sense. So thank you, and that's a wrap, Bradley.